Welcome back to the Peak Performance Podcast. I am Brad Young, and this is episode 92. Today we are doing something a little different. We are going back in time, far back, to one of the most extraordinary civilizations the world has ever known. We're talking about the Inca Empire, and more specifically, the warriors who defended it, built it, and ran it across one of the most brutal and beautiful landscapes on the face of the earth. This episode is on the Inca Warriors. We look at the secrets of the ancient peak performers. Sit down, get comfortable, and let the story come to you. By the time we are finished, you're going to have a completely new framework for what it means to perform at your absolute best, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And you're going to walk away with a real, practical training plan rooted in the ancient wisdom of the Inca warriors adapted for your life today. Let us begin. Who were the Inca warriors? Before we talk about training and diet and peak performance, we need to understand who these people actually were. The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu in the Quechua language, stretched across more than 2 million square miles of western South America at its height. It encompassed what is today Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, parts of Colombia, Chile, and Argentina. It was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America, and it was built and held together not by accident, but by an extraordinary level of human capability. The warriors of the Inca Empire were not merely soldiers in the modern sense of the word, they were the physical embodiment of a culture that valued discipline, strength, endurance, and purpose above nearly all else. From a young age, male members of Inca society were evaluated, trained, and shaped for their role within the empire. Those who showed exceptional physical gifts, mental fortitude, and loyalty were directed toward military life. These were men who ran messages across mountain passes at altitudes that would leave most modern athletes gasping for air. They marched armies across hundreds of miles of difficult terrain. They fought in close combat, managed complex logistics, and did all of this while maintaining a level of physical conditioning that most people today would find nearly impossible to achieve. They were, by every reasonable measure, peak performers of the highest order. What made them so remarkable was not any single quality. It was the combination, the diet, the training, the environment, the mindset, and the culture. Strip away any one of those elements, and the picture changes entirely. Together, they produced something genuinely extraordinary. That is what we are going to unpack today, piece by piece, so that you can take the best of what they knew and bring it into your own life. The mountain is their training ground. Let us start with the most obvious thing about the Inca warriors, the environment in which they lived and trained. The Andes Mountains are not a gentle place. They are steep, unpredictable, cold, thin-aired, and demanding in a way that few places on Earth can match. The average altitude of the Inca heartland sits somewhere between 8,000 and 14,000 feet above sea level. Cusco, the imperial capital, rests at over 11,000 feet. Some of the mountain passes the warriors regularly crossed exceeded 16,000 feet. At those altitudes, the air contains roughly 40% less oxygen than what you breathe at sea level. For someone not adapted to high altitude living, even walking briskly at 12,000 feet can feel like running a sprint. Your lungs work harder, your heart beats faster, your muscles burn more quickly. The body's under constant stress simply from existing in that environment. But here's the thing about stress. When applied consistently and intelligently over time, it makes you stronger. The Inca warriors did not just tolerate the high altitude, they thrived in it. Years of living, training, and operating at elevation caused profound physiological adaptations. Their hearts grew more efficient, their lung capacity expanded, their blood developed a greater ability to carry oxygen to working muscles. In the language of modern sports science, they had exceptional cardiovascular efficiency, and they got it the hard way through a lifetime of altitude exposure and relentless physical activity. For us, this is lesson number one. Your environment is either working for you or against you. The Inca warriors did not train in a climate-controlled gym on flat rubber flooring. They trained on the mountain in the cold, at altitude, on uneven stone paths. The difficulty of their environment was not a barrier to performance, it was the source of it. When you consistently train in conditions that challenge your body, well, whether that means hill running, cold exposure, or carrying weight over difficult terrain, You force adaptations that cannot be replicated any other way. Endurance, the foundation of everything. The Chasqui runners. Relay runners called Chasqui could carry messages over 1,000 miles in just a few days, running in shifts across the entire length of the Empire's road network. Each runner covered 6 to 9 miles at full effort before handing off to the next. The road network. The Inca road system covered over 25,000 miles. Warriors marched and ran this network regularly, building the kind of deep aerobic base that modern endurance athletes spend years trying to develop through structured training programs. Sustained output. Inca warriors were expected to march 20 to 30 miles per day while carrying supplies, weapons, and equipment. This kind of sustained physical output required a level of aerobic fitness that most modern people never develop in a lifetime of occasional exercise. Endurance was not one quality among many for the Inca warrior. It was the foundation upon which everything else was built. You cannot fight effectively if you are exhausted before the battle begins. You cannot coordinate with your unit if you cannot keep up. You cannot use your skills with a weapon if your arms and legs are too fatigued to function properly. Endurance was the base layer, and the Inca took its development seriously. The training for endurance was not sophisticated by modern standards. There were no heart rate monitors, no lactate threshold tests, no periodization spreadsheets. What there was instead was volume, enormous, consistent daily volume of physical movement across difficult terrain. Running, walking, climbing, carrying loads, day after day, week after week, year after year. The body adapted because it had no other choice. Modern exercise science confirms what the Inca already knew intuitively. The single most effective way to build endurance is through consistent, sustained aerobic effort over a long period of time. Not sprinting every day until you collapse. Not going all out every session, but steady, purposeful movement building week upon week until the body becomes something new. More efficient, more resilient, more capable than it was before. The warrior's table, nutrition that built an empire. Now let us talk about food, because this is where a lot of people get surprised. When most of us imagine ancient diets, we picture something primitive and insufficient, barely enough to survive on. The reality of what the Inca warriors ate is nearly the opposite. Their diet was remarkably well suited to the demands placed on their bodies, and in several important ways, it was more intelligent than what the average person in a modern developed nation eats today. The staple of the Inca diet was the potato, not one variety, but hundreds. The Inca domesticated and cultivated somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 varieties of potato across the Andes, and it formed the caloric backbone of everyday life for everyone in the empire, warriors included. Potatoes are an exceptional food for endurance athletes. They are rich in complex carbohydrates, which provide long-lasting, steady energy. They contain meaningful amounts of vitamin C, potassium, and B vitamins. They are easy to store, easy to prepare, and calorie-dense without being heavy or difficult to digest. It is one of the very few plant foods that contains all 9 essential amino acids, making it what nutritionists today call a complete protein. For warriors who needed to repair and rebuild muscle after hard training and combat, quinoa was an invaluable source of recovery nutrition. It is high in iron, magnesium, and fiber. It is easy to carry and store, and it grows at high altitudes where many other crops cannot survive, making it perfectly suited to the Andean environment. For protein, Inca warriors relied on dried and preserved meats, particularly llama and alpaca. These meats were often prepared as a product called charqui, which is actually the origin of the English word jerky. Charqui was lightweight, protein dense, and could be carried on long marches without spoiling. It was essentially the original performance food for on-the-go endurance. They also consumed dried fish when available and supplemented with legumes and various Andean tubers that provided additional nutrients and slow-burning carbohydrates. What is striking about this diet when viewed through the lens of modern sports nutrition is how clean and purposeful it is. There is no processed sugar, no refined grain, no artificial additive. Everything has a function. The carbohydrates fuel activity. The protein supports muscle repair and growth. The vegetables and tubers provide the micronutrients that keep every system in the body running properly. It is, in the language of today's nutritionists, a whole food, high performance diet, and it was built not by scientists in a laboratory, but by centuries of practical wisdom and cultural refinement. Quinoa, the ancient superfood. Why the Inca called it the mother grain? The Inca referred to quinoa as Chisaya Mama, which translates roughly as the mother of all grains. This was not poetic exaggeration. Quinoa was sacred because it was survival. The emperor himself would ceremonially plant the first quinoa seeds of each season using a golden implement, signifying the crop's importance to the empire's entire way of life. For warriors specifically, quinoa's nutritional profile made it irreplaceable. High in protein, rich in iron and magnesium, and containing anti inflammatory compounds, it supported the kind of hard physical training that military life demanded. It could be cooked into porridge, dried for travel, or ground into flour. Its versatility matched its nutritional power. How to use quinoa like a warrior today. Incorporating quinoa into your diet is straightforward and deeply worthwhile. Use it as a base grain in place of rice or pasta. Cook a large batch at the beginning of your week and add it to meals throughout the days that follow. Combine it with roasted vegetables and a protein source for a balanced meal that will sustain your energy for hours. For pre-training fuel, quinoa porridge with a small amount of honey and a handful of berries gives you slow-burning carbohydrates, complete protein, and antioxidants in a single bowl. Post-training, a quinoa bowl with lean meat and leafy greens covers your protein and micronutrient needs for recovery. Simple, ancient, and powerfully effective. High Altitude Living, Nature's Performance Lab. We touched on altitude briefly when we discussed the Inca training environment, but it deserves its own dedicated conversation because the physiological impact of living and training at high altitude is one of the most significant factors in understanding how Inca warriors became the physical specimens they were. Modern athletes pay enormous sums of money to travel to altitude training camps for 3 to 4 weeks at a time, trying to capture some fraction of the adaptation that the Inca warriors lived with every single day of their lives. When the human body is exposed to reduced oxygen levels over an extended period, it responds with a cascade of adaptations designed to maintain performance. The kidneys release a hormone called erythropoietin, which signals the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. More red blood cells mean a greater capacity to carry oxygen from the lungs to the muscles. The muscles themselves develop more mitochondria, the cellular structures that convert oxygen and fuel into usable energy. The heart becomes more efficient, pumping more blood per beat. The lungs increase their capacity and efficiency. The result of these adaptations, built over years rather than weeks, was a population of warriors with cardiovascular systems that were genuinely exceptional by any measure. When they descended from the highlands to fight at lower altitudes, they had an enormous physiological advantage. Their blood carried more oxygen. Their muscles used that oxygen more efficiently. They could sustain high levels of physical effort for longer periods before fatigue set in. This was not magic. It was biology shaped by environment and decades of adaptation. For modern readers, the practical application is not necessarily to move to the Andes. Rather, it is to appreciate that environmental challenge, applied consistently over time, produces real and lasting physical adaptation. If you live near hills, run them. If you can access higher elevations periodically, train there. Carry weight when you walk. Make your body work harder than it needs to on flat, comfortable ground, and it will reward you with adaptations you could not achieve any other way. Weapons mastery and the art of purposeful practice. The sling. The Inca sling, called a huaraca, was the warrior's most iconic weapon. Made from woven fiber, it could hurl a stone with devastating force and accuracy. Mastery of the sling required thousands of hours of practice. Young warriors began learning as children, and the skill was refined over years of daily repetition. The accuracy and power that experienced warriors achieved with this simple weapon was remarkable. Some accounts suggest they could split a sword blade at distance. The spear and staff. Alongside the sling, Inca warriors were trained with spears and wooden staffs used as clubs and thrusting weapons. These required physical strength, coordination, and timing, qualities developed through structured, repetitive practice. Warriors drilled their weapon techniques the same way modern martial artists drill theirs, with full attention, high repetition, and the intent to make each movement automatic and precise under pressure. Philosophy of mastery. What the Inca understood intuitively was what researchers today call deliberate practice. Improvement comes not from casual repetition, but from focused, intentional work on specific skills, with attention to feedback and correction. Whether the skill is slinging a stone, running a mountain pass, or doing a deadlift, the principle is identical. Consistent, focused practice with full attention produces mastery that casual effort never will. Team coordination, the discipline of the unit. Peak performance is rarely a solo endeavor. One of the most underappreciated aspects of Inca warrior culture was the extraordinary emphasis placed on unit cohesion, collective discipline, and coordinated action. The Inca military was not a collection of individual fighters doing their own thing. It was a precisely organized, highly coordinated machine in which each warrior understood his role and trusted completely in the warriors around him. This was achieved through a combination of shared training, shared ritual, shared hardship, and a hierarchical command structure that was clearly communicated and deeply respected. Warriors trained together from a young age. They ate together, marched together, and lived in close proximity for extended periods. They shared the same physical challenges, the same food, the same weather, the same mountains. This shared experience created bonds of trust and mutual understanding that made coordinated action in the chaos of battle possible. The Inca military made use of a system called the decimal system of organization, in which units were structured in groups of 10, 50, 100, and 500, and 1,000 warriors, each with a designated leader responsible for the performance and welfare of those beneath him. This created clear lines of communication and accountability at every level of the organization. Every warrior knew exactly who was responsible for him and who he was responsible for. The lesson for the modern peak performer here is profound. No matter what field you are in, athletics, business, creative work, or anything else, your ability to collaborate, communicate, and coordinate with others is a performance variable. People who invest in their relationships, who build trust through shared effort and consistent behavior, who understand their role clearly and fill it completely, these people consistently outperform those who rely on individual talent alone. The Inca warriors understood this not as a soft skill, but as a core military doctrine. It should be core doctrine for all of us. Engineering as a performance multiplier. Build a road. The Inca constructed over 25,000 miles of paved roads through some of the most difficult terrain on Earth, including rope bridges over river gorges and stone causeways across wetlands. Move the army. These roads allowed armies to move with speed and precision that their enemies could not match. What might take a rival force weeks to accomplish, Inca forces could achieve in days because the infrastructure was already in place. Sustain the campaign. Along these roads, the Inca maintained a network of storehouses called colcas, stocked with food, weapons, clothing, and medical supplies. Warriors never had to forage or improvise. Everything they needed was pre-positioned and ready. Win without fighting. By controlling the roads and supply lines so completely, the Inca could sometimes achieve military objectives without direct combat by simply moving faster, sustaining longer, and outmaneuvering opponents who lack the same infrastructure advantage. The point here is not about road building, it is about systems thinking. The Inca warriors were peak performers in part because the civilization around them was engineered to support peak performance. They did not just train hard and eat well in a vacuum, they operated within a system designed to remove obstacles, provide resources, and create the conditions under which extraordinary effort becomes possible. For you, this means examining your environment with the same engineering mindset. What systems do you have in place to support your performance? Is your nutrition prepared and available, or do you reach for whatever is convenient? Is your sleep environment optimized, or are you leaving recovery on the table? Your results are, in part, a function of the systems you live within. Resilience in the warrior mind, physical training, and good nutrition will take you far, but they will not take you all the way. The difference between a person who performs well under easy conditions and a person who performs at their best under extreme pressure is almost always found in the mind. The Inca Warriors understood this with a clarity that is striking, especially when you consider how long ago they lived and how little formal understanding of psychology existed in their world. The Inca culture placed an exceptionally high value on emotional resilience. Warriors were expected not merely to endure hardship, but to approach it with equanimity, a calm, steady acceptance of whatever circumstances arose, combined with the determination to continue functioning effectively regardless of those circumstances. This was not a passive quality, it was an active, practiced stance toward difficulty that was cultivated deliberately from childhood through culture, ritual, and training. Young warriors were exposed to graduated levels of hardship as part of their development. Cold nights in thin mountain air without adequate shelter, days of reduced food, long marches without rest. These were not accidents or failures of planning. They were deliberate training inputs designed to expand the warrior's tolerance for discomfort and demonstrate to him, through direct experience, that he was capable of enduring more than he thought. Every time a young warrior passed through a hardship and came out the other side, his confidence in his own resilience grew. His fear of future hardship diminished. The mountain that once seemed impossible became familiar. This is exactly what modern sports psychologists mean when they talk about building mental toughness. It is not a fixed trait you either have or do not have. It is a quality that is developed through repeated voluntary exposure to difficulty, combined with the experience of coming through that difficulty intact. You build resilience by choosing hard things, and not recklessly, but consistently and progressively. And by watching yourself handle them, each successful navigation of discomfort becomes evidence that you can do it again, and next time, a little more. Tactical thinking, the warrior's intelligent edge. Use the terrain. Inca warriors were masters at using the mountain landscape to their advantage. They positioned forces in elevated locations, channeled enemies through narrow passes, and used natural features to compensate for numerical disadvantages. They did not fight on terms their enemies preferred. They shaped the battlefield, adapt and improvise. Rather than relying on rigid battle formations, Inca commanders were trained to read changing circumstances and adapt their tactics accordingly. Flexibility of thinking, grounded in solid preparation, was considered a military virtue of the highest order. A plan was a starting point, not a constraint. Psychological warfare. The Inca understood that battles are often won in the mind before they are won on the field. War drums, trumpets made from shells, and the coordinated battle cries of thousands of warriors were used deliberately to unsettle opponents before physical contact was even made. They competed on every level available to them. What does tactical thinking have to do with your personal performance? Everything. The most physically capable person in any competition is not always the one who wins. The person who wins is usually the one who combines physical preparation with intelligent decision making. In your own life, tactical thinking means choosing where to invest your limited time and energy for maximum return. It means recognizing your advantages and exploiting them rather than trying to compete on ground where you are at a disadvantage. It means being willing to adjust your approach when the plan meets reality rather than persisting blindly in a direction that is not working. Train hard, but also train smart. The two are not in competition, they are partners. Purpose, the invisible force behind every great performance. We have talked about the body, the training, the diet, the altitude adaptation. We have talked about the mind, the resilience, the tactical thinking, the unit cohesion. Now we need to talk about something that runs beneath all of those things, something that powers them and gives them direction. We need to talk about purpose. The Inca warrior did not train and fight simply because someone told him to, or because he had nothing better to do, or because he wanted to look good. He trained and fought because he understood himself to be part of something vastly larger than his own individual existence. He was a servant of the Sapa Inca, the emperor, who was considered a living embodiment of the sun god Inti. He was a guardian of Tawantinsuyu, the four regions of the world. He carried the honor of his community, his family, and his lineage in everything he did. His performance on the battlefield was not just a personal matter, it was a sacred duty. This connection to a sense of purpose, larger than the self, is one of the most powerful performance drivers ever identified in human psychology. Researchers have found consistently that people who understand their work as meaningful, these who can articulate why it matters beyond personal gain, sustain greater effort, recover more quickly from setbacks, and achieve higher levels of excellence over time than people motivated purely by external reward or avoiding punishment. Purpose is not a soft, fuzzy concept. It is a physiological performance enhancer. It changes the way stress is experienced. It shifts the perception of difficulty from threat to challenge. It makes the hard work feel worthwhile even when results are not yet visible. Before the Inca warrior entered battle, he participated in rituals, offerings to the gods, prayers, communal ceremonies that reinforced his connection to the sacred mission he served. These rituals were not superstition. They were a technology for aligning the individual warrior's psychology with the purpose that drove his commitment. They answered the question that every human being needs answered before undertaking something genuinely difficult. Why does this matter? If you cannot answer that question clearly, no amount of physical training will be enough to carry you through the hardest moments. If you can answer it with clarity and conviction, you will find reserves of capability you did not know you had. The complete picture: 9 pillars of Inca performance, endurance training at volume. Daily, sustained physical movement across difficult terrain built the aerobic base that made everything else possible. Whole food high performance nutrition. Potatoes, quinoa, maize, and dried meats provided the fuel, protein, and micronutrients that supported hard training and fast recovery. High altitude physiological adaptation. A lifetime at elevation produced cardiovascular systems of exceptional efficiency and blood oxygen carrying capacity. Deliberate weapons mastery. Thousands of hours of focused, intentional practice transformed complex physical skills into automatic, reliable capability under pressure. Unit cohesion and collective discipline. Shared hardship, clear roles, and mutual trust produce coordinated performance that individual talent alone could never achieve. Systems engineering for performance support. Infrastructure, supply chains, and logistics removed friction and created the conditions under which exceptional effort became sustainable. Cultivated mental resilience. Deliberate exposure to graduated hardship built emotional tolerance and demonstrated to warriors their own extraordinary capability. Tactical intelligence and adaptability. Strategic thinking, terrain mastery, and psychological awareness multiplied the impact of raw physical capability on the battlefield. Deep sense of sacred purpose. Connection to a mission larger than the self-sustained effort through hardship and gave meaning to every sacrifice the training demanded. Closing: the path is the practice. The Peak Performance Podcast, episode 92. Brad Young. That is episode 92 of the Peak Performance Podcast. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you have come away not just with information about the Inca Warriors, but with a genuine sense of inspiration, a feeling that the kind of performance they embodied is something you can work toward in your own life, in your own way, starting today. The 12-week training plan we walk through is a starting point, not a ceiling. When you finish it, you will be ready for more volume, more intensity, more complexity. But more importantly, you will have built the habits, the mindset, and the physical foundation that make continued growth possible. The plan ends. The practice does not. That is the nature of peak performance. It is not a destination you arrive at and stay. It is a direction you choose every single day. If there is one thing I want you to take from this episode, it is this: the Inca Warriors were not superhuman. They were human beings like you who were placed in an environment that demanded extraordinary things of them and who responded to those demands with discipline, consistency, and purpose over a long period of time. You're being asked for nothing less and nothing more. The mountain is in front of you. The path is clear. All that remains is to take the first step. Start this week. Begin phase 1 of the Warrior Training Plan. Go for your first 45-minute walk on the most challenging terrain near you. Pack a light bag. Bring water. Move with intention. Change one meal. Replace one meal this week with a Warrior Foundation meal. Quinoa or sweet potato, a quality protein source, and as many vegetables as you can fit on the plate. Notice how it makes you feel. Write your purpose. Tonight, before you sleep, write one paragraph answering this question. Why does becoming the strongest, most resilient version of yourself actually matter to the people and things you love most? That answer is your purpose. Guard it carefully. Until next time, keep climbing. This is Brad Young, and this has been the Peak Performance Podcast. Take care of yourselves out there.